Hello, Bayside and Galt. My name is Rosendo. You know that, and I get to be one of the pastors. And I just wanted to spend a few minutes with you for a midweek devotional. And I want to remind us about the celebration we had at Easter just a few days ago, right? We celebrated God's new life, the incredible, miraculous work He did to raise Jesus from the dead and therefore give us new life as well. We paid attention to that. We celebrated it and we felt wonderful about it. And I wonder what we've been paying attention to since then. If you're like me, so much has happened since then, and there's been so much to deal with since then. And I want to challenge you with this thought. What we pay attention to, what we look at, what we see will create a feeling and emotion in us. When we're watching a comedy, we're going to start laughing. If we keep on watching comedies one after the other, we start being a little bit more jovial. If we start looking at the one that we love, if we're in a new romance, we look or just think about the one that we love, and life is great. Doesn't matter what's going on around us. You know, in the same way, when we look at everything that's coming down the news feed, everything that's coming down our media outlets, and whatever we look at that's reporting to us threat after threat after threat, maybe the same threat, just communicated so many different ways. What we are looking at is danger, and that creates a feeling in us too. It creates an outlook and a coloring on our life. So my question to you is, what do you see right now? What are you looking at? We have a choice to pay attention to what we celebrate as believers, faith in Christ, or we have a choice to pay attention to and focus the circumstances and the environment around us. In Mark chapter 4, starting in verse 35, we read about Jesus being in a boat and in a storm with his disciples. First of all, he told his disciples, let's go to the other side. So they got into the boat. I mean, the plan was to go from here to there. Jesus said it. And along their way, this big storm comes up. This big squall comes up. So threatening was the storm that the disciples thought that they were going to die. The waves were crashing over the boat. The boat was being tossed back and forth, and the disciples just working as hard as they can to get the water out of the boat, to strap it down, and to keep sailing away. And finally, they turn to Jesus and say, they wake him up. He's asleep. He's asleep during the storm where everybody else is going crazy. And they wake him up and they say, don't you care that we're going to drown? What are you doing? He immediately gets up, looks at the storm, and says, quiet, be still. And it becomes completely calm. Still, the water is just completely calm. And the disciples go from being afraid of the storm to being afraid of what they just witnessed. Who is this man? What in the world? He could actually, the wind and the waves obey him. Not just a calming where the water is splashing back and forth as a residual effect, but completely calm. And Jesus looks at them and says, why do you have so little faith? Why were you afraid? And then they just move on. Here's an interesting thing. Jesus told them they were going to go to the other side. They saw the threat around them, and they thought that that was going to end, that their plans were now different. Their life was in danger. Their circumstances, the reality of what was happening, that was real. But what was also real is that Jesus was with them, just like he's with you and I right now. If we have put our faith in him, and he has inspired us and moved us and told us and spoken plans into our lives that we're going to be pouring into our families, we're going to be pouring into our church community, pouring into our neighbors, and whatever it might be, that is still happening. The plans that he has for us is still happening, even if threat is around us. You see, the disciples started to pay attention to the threat and didn't notice Jesus until they turned to him with accusation. In the same way, we might see threat all around us. We might see that our world, our lives, our schedules has been turned upside down. Our investments have just plummeted. Our outlook financially doesn't look good, and we are weary with what's going on. And we're trying to handle it the best that we can, and we're doing so by trying to get as much information that we can. And that information is threatening. It's like, dealing with the waves over and over. All the while, Jesus is with us. But when we finally turn to him, we turn to him with accusation. Don't you see what's going on? Why are you letting this happen? How much longer? Here's what we need to do. We need to understand that we need to turn our attention from our feelings and our emotions and start thinking about what we know. That God has a plan, that Jesus is more powerful, stronger, and loving during this time. That there is a reason and a purpose and an opportunity for what we're going through right now. There is something at hand that God is using for our good. Feelings, when we pay attention to them long enough, they become our reality. The fear of a threat becomes a real, an actual experience when we pay attention to it long enough. But the way to get out of our feelings is to think and to remember what we know and let that produce a different feeling, a different emotion, one of celebration and thankfulness and gladness. In the midst of the storm, we could be thankful that Jesus is with us and he's greater than the storm. Our feelings are normal and natural and good. If we saw a lion running after us, it would be good to be afraid so that we could respond appropriately. We would run as fast as we could because we're afraid. We would take cover because we're afraid. We'd start praying like never before because we're afraid. But if a lion starts running after us full board, hungry, a real threat, but we're at a zoo and we see a glass in front of us, we might flinch, we might be afraid for a moment, but then we see what else is available, what else is real, and we start thinking and we start realizing, although that lion looks threatening, I know that I'm safe and I can live in a different reality. In the same way, we could look around us and see that there's threat, there's danger, there's a pessimistic outlook, but there is also Jesus with us. Let's spend time with him. Let's get our eyes on him. Let's fix our eyes on him. Take advantage of this time that we have right now to spend time with him, personally, intimately, privately, with our family, with the people around us in our households. Let's fix our eyes on him so that we see the one who is greater than any storm. Jesus was sleeping calmly in the midst of the storm, gives us an example of what we can do as well. We can rest, be still as we come to him. That takes effort sometimes, but it's worth the effort to transfer our experience from only our feelings, transfer it over to what we know is true, to what we believe, that Jesus is with us and he loves us.